The show is the drawn word. My name is Chris Irving. The place is New York City. Our guest tonight has been drawing Spy vs. Spy for Mad Magazine since 1996. But that's the least of Peter Kuper's accomplishments, which also include co-founding World War III Illustrated magazine and releasing a new ebook of his New York sketches. Please join me for Peter Kuper. I'm here with Peter Kuper, the cartoonist behind Spy vs. Spy for Mad Magazine, and even on a larger scale, the editor of World War III Illustrated magazine. How are you doing today, Peter?
Very good.
So your most recent venture is Drawn to New York, which is primarily an ebook.
Well, there's a Spanish edition of it, and there's a French edition coming out, and I'm in the process of getting a US edition on paper, but it's come out in English as an ebook.
Is that only for the iPad?
That's right, yeah.
Why debut it digitally like this?
Well, I got a lot of interest from a number of e-publishers to develop books in that form, and they were developing it, and I had yet to have a print publisher in English. I already had set up a Spanish edition, which came out in the fall, and so it was there, and it seemed like there would be no harm in having it come out that way. And it's a whole nother area that I'm not wholly certain. I'm like both feet in, but I'm really curious about what can be done there, and it clearly is an arc of things that are coming. So
yeah, well, I don't think it's very wild west with digital right now. Do you see this becoming a regular model?
You know, I'm not sure. I think that the enhanced ebook is another possibility where you can do different things. And for instance, I have a book called Diario de Oaxaca about my time in Mexico, and I'm talking to an e-publisher about doing things that would include open source material. I'm learning this as I go, but that, for example, you could go directly to a video that would show what was happening in Mexico at the time that I was there. You could, you know, that there'd be footage and associated things that would sound that might be an interesting area that would sort of be a bridge between animation and documentary and then a paper book. But I'm not leaving paper. And I mean, I'll leave kicking and screaming.
So World War III Illustrated, do you ever see that going away from the print world?
I think it's a distinct possibility depending on what happens with the distribution systems that get them in, you know, if there's not comic stores and there's not, you know, as there are fewer outlets for places that would carry it, then of course that is going to beg that question. But we're pretty devoted to print still. We still love the print form, but we're also developing a website, and I mean, it's been an ongoing thing. And that's, you know, part of the general idea of all these things is just to reach out, communicate with people, let them see your thing and be able to share it. And that if digital is part of that, that's fine. I just physically like, you know, to hold something in my hand. I like to smell a book, and you know, it's not kinky. I just happen to.
No, speaking of which, you brought the Spanish edition, and it smells great. The first
the reviewers say that actually.
The first thing I did was just like.
Yeah, no, there's something about, and also, you know, just the physicality of it. And in fact, what I'm starting to do, and weirdly, I'm having this with my publisher, my Spanish language publisher, is make the books physically more of a thing. Like, you know, like with this one, you know, it has like a spot gloss on it, and it has this this little tail that you can, you know, mark the page with. And you know, these things are sort of, they're bells and whistles on one count, but they're actually also very much part of what a tactile experience a book can be. And I very much like the idea that there's things that are unique to a book that will go away if we go completely E. And so that in the meantime, you know, I'm taking full advantage of what you can do that's strictly ideal in that form.
So you had moved to New York in 1977 from Cleveland. When do the sketches in Drawn to New York begin?
The earliest is probably 81 or 82, and I was sketchbooking, but there weren't things I wanted to see in print. But after art school, or right around the time that I was wrapping up in art school, and so that's some of the earliest things there. So it's really 30 years of work included in there. But I still am sketchbooking all the time, and so it's very ongoing.
So where were you as a cartoonist in the first sketches in here?
Let's see, somewhere between, I think I discovered Steinberg in particular, Ralph Steadman, R. Crumb, you know, the usual gang of idiots. It's kind of a cross-section, but a lot of it was I was just trying to record my experience. So there'd be a lot of life drawings and just things in the street, but then they always seem to have humor creeping into them, or sort of an exploding dark end of the spectrum, which I can't seem to resist.
So this was the beginnings of the Peter Kuper who we know today.
Yeah, well, it's funny to see all this stuff side by side. I actually mixed it all up because I didn't do it chronologically, because I felt like there was a lot of black and white work, and there was also the certain qualities of the work that were just emotionally darker, probably from that period. And because when I first moved to New York, it was bankrupt, and there was a garbage strike, and the second blackout happened, and it was just pandemonium, and which I loved. I mean, I felt like this is my town. But it just, you know, there's a lot of grunge in there, which it came in different forms over the years. Although weirdly, you know, when I look at it, it does sort of. I keep on wanting to turn towards the light more, and especially after I lived in Mexico, I had this feeling like I really want to be a little more positive here. You know, I'm just. Yeah. But I'm drawn to aspects of our history that tend to be represented by things that are more, I guess, a little more apocalyptic, and a little more the darker corners of things, because I just find it much more interesting. You know, I like to do a drawing of Central Park, you know, with beautiful green leaves, but I, you know, like lying on the beach. That's a nice vacation, but I really like traveling. And when you go traveling, the best parts of it are the ones that are really like intense, and that at the time you might be swatting flies away from your face and going, I want to be out of here. But then when you come home, that's the meat of your trip. Yeah. And so in a lot of ways, I think that's why I love New York, is that it's like traveling all the time, and you're constantly rubbing shoulders with world events in a lot of ways. You know, you can see what's coming. You know, I can look at the building next to ours, and I can see what the immigration wave is going to be. I can, walking down the street, I can sort of see what the economic situation is, how many stores are closed, how many homeless people are there. And so it's it's kind of an interesting barometer, and I'm never bored here.
When I first talked to you, I think you had just moved back from Mexico. You were in Mexico for 4 years, correct? Two, okay. Maybe it seemed twice as long ago. So you were in Mexico for 2 years. Do you feel like going away for 2 years made it easier for you to come back? Well, when you came back, did you start looking at New York through a new set of eyes?
I think artistically I had gone through the process of seeing all this color there, and that's where I really felt this pull to want to bring in more beauty or something like that. I mean, I don't know if it's hope, or there was just a quality that I was getting from the kind of drawings I did when I was in Mexico, and I did start applying that to the work I was doing sketching in New York, and a lot of that got into this book. Sort of mural-like drawings where I would start, say, sketching, and it would maybe begin being I don't know, well, that's from Istanbul, but it might begin being like a little sketch over here, but then it would sort of bleed out into being, you know, going across pages, and like I said, sort of mural-like. Anyway, it was, I feel like I'm still processing the information from my experience in Mexico, because I moved towards more watercolor and sketchbooking, and the spray paint and stencil work that I had been doing, aside from the health issue that was involved, I just found like that was kind of one note that I certainly applied a lot during the Bush years, and it perfectly captured how I felt about kind of a screaming stencil on a wall flavor that felt like the street and felt like my anger. And that since I've been back, I've been trying to find a way to talk about what's going on, but then find a different route. And I think that's the influence of being away and traveling. But you know, it's not like I feel like everything's changed and the issues are all gone. It's all cleared up now. Now we have Obama. Yeah. But I do feel like there's maybe a different way to talk about these things, and because it's all about communication. I mean, my intention is I want to, if I'm going to communicate what I see, sometimes it works to grab somebody by the lapels and go, look over there, we're in trouble. And sometimes it works to say, wouldn't it be nice if we had a better, you know, a more shared situation, something that was, you know, isn't there a brighter future that we could arrive at? And there's a lot of different ways to say that. And sometimes screaming is the route, and sometimes maybe showing people, you know, using the art to say how things could be. You know, art doesn't always have to strictly show what's wrong. It can show what, you know, the world that you might want.
So World War III Illustrated since 1980 has been your forum for political discourse and cartooning. Do you feel that World War III is still, because you've grown obviously in 30 years, do you feel it's...
A couple inches, really.
Just a couple inches, okay. Well, you've grown a couple inches in 30 years. Do you feel that World War III Illustrated is still as effective for you as an artist to convey your message as it was back in 1980?
I keep finding every time I think that it's sort of like, well, it's run its course, it's done its thing, or, well, I can get more mainstream venues, and so, you know, why self-publish and do this kind of political magazine? I found that we run into situations where you can't talk about things in the mainstream, and you don't have enough room, say, in a regular newsstand magazine to spend 11 pages talking about what's going on in Oaxaca, Mexico. And these are the kinds of things that you can do in World War III, and it's in an uncensored way. It's also the idea of creating kind of a community of artists. I always felt like kind of ripped off, because I felt like my generation, and this probably would apply to any incoming generation, we always arrive just in time for, like, hey, you just missed the underground comic scene, or you just missed the beach generation. You just, you know, you get to the beach just in time for the medical waste to wash up, you know, and that what I realized, yeah, after 30 some years of doing this magazine, that creating this kind of thing, this kind of sort of collective, or not exactly an art movement, but something akin to that, is something that we have been doing, and that there actually is this sort of community that we have there, and that we had a 30th anniversary retrospective at Exit Art in New York, this huge gallery, and then it's traveling now. It was just at the University of North Dakota, one of the other big hot spots. They did have an Occupy North Forks. So you know, this stuff does spread. It's amazing. Yeah. And it was actually really exciting to have the show there, where people were just flying off the walls to see this kind of work and feel this connection. But I just realized in looking at the magazine and the show that, yeah, that we've actually created this sort of, you know, it's part of several different movements, you know, the alternative comics movement, and it's carrying on the underground comics, and also just created a forum for a lot of people who would otherwise not have gotten their work out there, who've gone on to do amazing graphic novels like Eric Drucker and Seth Bachman, and who I co-founded it with, and Sabrina Jones, and a whole bunch of people got their first taste of print in the magazine, and it, even for that matter, kind of was like a message in a bottle. And some of the people who've ended up working on it, even as editors, like Kevin Pyle, I think he was in Kansas, and he found a copy of it, and it was just like, oh my God, what is this? And it got him in. It made him realize what you could do with comics, but also drew him to New York. and he ended up working on the magazine. Now he's doing graphic novels, and that I feel like in that way that's like one of the things that we do with the magazine is we're sort of casting out this line that some people grab hold of, and it has value that in a lot of ways there's no way to calculate.
And you were also working on the next generation, speaking of generations, as a teacher at Harvard.
True, yes.
So tell me about that. What are you teaching, and how big is your class, and how's the experience?
It's fantastic. It's called graphic novels only because I just needed some little title that everybody would get easily. If it said comics, they'd think it's like, haha.
Yeah, it's comedians.
Yes, comedians get together.
I work in comics. Oh,
Jerry Lewis, right?
Stand up. Yeah, and I'm like, no, comic books.
So I just thought, I'll just give it a title that's currency. And I had way too many students enroll, and I actually had to interview, and they only take 12 students because they keep classes nice and small. And the students are doing amazing work, and it's quite a commute to go from New York up to Boston every week, but I actually find myself arriving with great enthusiasm for a 4-hour class.
Wow.
And I'm also teaching at School of Visual Arts, and that I guess there's some part of me that really likes that kind of like, here's the information, what do I do with it? Here, comics are great, here, you should know this, and that it causes me to also look into the form, which is a bottomless well of new information, and every time I think I've spent my decades looking at it, I look at it more and go, wow, there's something new, and the connective tissue of comics to all these other forms, going back to cave painting and codexes and murals and all these things that I see as being all sort of collectively part of this history of using art as language, and speaking of which, a segue into Spy versus Spy, which is that the idea of using the image just as literally as language where there's no words, and which is a whole nother area that's I find really interesting. And
yes, and you've been doing Spy versus Spy since 1996.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long run so far. Do you plan on sticking with it?
Well, every year, I think it was my last year, I thought I was going to do it for a year or two. And then at some point, when I thought, well, I pretty much run its course, it went to color. And then I'm actually finding I'm kind of reinvigorated with the possibilities of what I can do with it in reference to looking at a lot of old comic strips. And so I don't see any immediate end to it. It's a pretty cool day job.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Peter. That pretty much wraps us up. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Let's see. Comics are the greatest art form ever, and I think that was the editorial in the fanzine that I did with my friend Seth Tabachman in 1970, and apparently this is a feeling that hasn't gone away.
Oh.
So.
I'll definitely take it and agree with it. Thanks so much.
Sure.